Oi, oi, it's your boy, the Molly McCann of shagging your nan, Jack Slack. It's the Jack Slack podcast, and I'm coming at you, your reporter from the front lines. Here in the UK, the word has gone out, UFC's cooked. It's done, mate. Stick a fork in it, take it behind the barn and shoot it in the head. Whatever was good about this sport is gone, the magic's left. This card, it looked on paper better than many of the Apex cards they've put on in recent weeks, but man, did it turn out bad. Now, finishes do not make a card. That one with 9 finishes the other day was not exceptional. I mean, it's exceptional in the fact that there aren't normally 9 finishes, but finishes do not mean good fights. There was a fight company called Explode Fight Series that used to find prospects from legitimate gyms and have them fight mentally ill people who had losing records. Most famously, they did Alima Leigh McFarlane versus Soccer Mum, and that card, every single person down the right hand of the card had between an 0-3 and an 0-12 record. And there were 28 finishes in 30 fights. So if you want finishes at all costs, it can be accomplished. It's just not going to be a good night of fights. But this one had almost no finishes, and it sucked. And I could have done with some finishes to save me from some of these fights. What was good? Main event. And people were walking out during the main event, and I'm confused. Often in my ivory tower, I forget what the regular person likes about fights. But if you knew anything about Leon Edwards, you probably knew that this fight was going to be a bit dull. You're just annoyed that it's dull and he's losing, not dull and he's winning. Unless you only know that he head kicked someone once, which is, I suppose, what a lot of people know. But whether you're willing to put like 3 months' wages down on extremely inflated tickets because of that, fair play to you if you take that little consideration over anything in your life. Don't start me on the ticket prices. I was trying to get some for the sumo at the Albert Hall the other day. I'm fuming. But Sean Brady came out, and I've not been super impressed with Sean Brady before. I know he's got skill. He beat Craig Jones in a grappling match, which is crazy. I think they didn't allow heel hooks in that, but it's still crazy. And he has looked pretty decent in the fights I've seen him in, but he doesn't finish an awful lot of people, and this is easily his best finish ever. This is easily his best opponent he's ever finished. And his stand-ups looked a bit flappy, and then he got boxed up in one of the worst MMA boxing matches ever with Bilal. But I was really impressed here. Really impressed. There's a lot of Leon is cooked. I think that might be a little bit premature. Some of the stuff that got him in trouble was stuff that's always sort of let him down. Even in his 8-0 run or whatever it was when he was trying to get a title shot, there were always these frustrating moments where you'd go, "You're an extremely skilled fighter. Why have you done that?" I mean, think about the takedown attempt in round 3 here, where it's just like you spent the previous round entirely on the mat and you just shot a really bad takedown on a guy who wants to be on top of you. Why'd you do that, Leon? But this one, round 1, he looked great. I mean, the stuff that I thought would give Brady trouble in round 1 gave him trouble. Anytime Brady got to the clinch, he'd get the underhook with his left hand. Leon Edwards would drape heavy over that hand with the overhook. He'd have his head straight into Brady's jaw, and he'd be controlling the other hand on the other side. There was a lot of fighting for that hand. Brady was doing a really good job fighting for it, but it meant that Leon Edwards was able to land his knees, and he lands really good knees from that position. If you are seeking the clinch with Leon Edwards, you're going to get beaten up. Those are actually the fights where he looks pretty good, like Gunnar Nelson, Donald Cerrone. So I was going, how's Brady going to deal with this? And Brady was actually looking pretty good on the feet. He was getting up in Leon's face, which is important. Leon's feet looked a bit slow because I promise you that Bilal Muhammad's not the first person to think of getting in Leon Edwards' face, and he did a really good job of continuously walking up to him and closing the distance, where in the first fight he just sort of ran at him and fell short over and over again. But he didn't invent the idea of getting close to Leon Edwards. Other people have tried to crowd him, but Leon looked very foot slow, getting out of the way here. I like what Brady was doing. He was throwing out low kicks and things to get Leon checking, because if you get a guy checking, he's standing on one foot, you've got that instant where you can start moving before he's moving. Can't run away on one leg. Something I'm always hammering home on this podcast is, because the other guy has better low kicks than you, that doesn't mean there's no value in you low kicking, because the defense to the low kick is very different to the low kick. You get him on one leg when he defends the low kick. Or he ignores the low kick and you can just kick him for free. But anyway, Brady, he hit the clinch late in round 1 and he waited on the knee because Leon Edwards throws these pounding knees from that head pin overhook position. And he waited on the knee, and as the knee came up, he pushed Leon so that he had to take a step, blocked the foot at the shin, or it might have been the knee. You could either call this a Sasai Surakomi Ashi or a Hizaguruma. I don't remember what Sasai Surakomi Ashi is, but in English, but Hizaguruma is knee wheel. But they're both the same technique, but where your foot is on their leg makes the difference. The important point is he made Leon have to step, and he blocked the foot that needed to step. So Leon's centre of gravity moves way past his leg, falls on his arse. Sean Brady ends up on top for the end of the first round. First round, I think you still could have given to Leon. I mean, depends how you're scoring the strikes out in the open, because Brady landed a couple of good ones. He landed a nice, something I really like from open stance matchups, Southpaw versus Orthodox. Leon's the Southpaw and Brady was Orthodox. But he threw a slapping left hook, right straight, left jab. 3-2-1 as opposed to 1-2-3. It's a lovely little combination because each punch is longer than the last. Very good for Southpaw versus Orthodox matchups, especially because you can use the hook, quote unquote hook, because it can just be slapping the lead hand out of the way. Anyway, second round he came out and he threw an overhand straight into a takedown attempt, like off the referee getting out of the way, and that was good because even in the third and fourth round when he ended up in the clinch, he was still struggling. So the two really good takedowns he got in 2 and 4 were from really well-timed entries on the hips. When he was on top, he looked fantastic. I saw someone say that he's the closest thing we've got to Damian Maia at the moment. And then watching this fight, I was acutely aware of the half-guard passing, which was very Maia. Also shades of Roger Gracie, Paulo Filho in there with the Kimura use. But when you get to half-guard on someone, a lot of people hold the head, they look for the cross-face. Damian Maia used to do a thing where he'd just sort of put his elbow on the other side of their head. So they were under his armpit. He's not putting pressure on their head in any way. They're just under his armpit and they can't just sit up or anything like that. And then you look towards their legs, where one of your legs is trapped between theirs. You use your elbow or your hand on their top thigh, and you just you heel toe your foot up to their butt so that your shin is upright, and it just pops through. And then you push yourself into 3/4 mount, which of course in MMA is a big deal. So in grappling, people typically want to have good head control and then move to 3/4 mount because you want to keep control of the head, get the underhook, walk the arm up and start looking for arm triangles and things like that. MMA, you peek your knee through to 3/4 mount and you get on top. 3/4 mount and mount are essentially the same in MMA. Well, there's actually some more advantages to 3/4 mount, but because the main appeal of the mount is that you can sit up and start smashing them with punches and elbows, it's the same. Whereas if you push yourself into 3/4 mount in a grappling match, you don't have grips, the control's a little bit worse, you don't have underhooks, it's different things. But Brady was doing it over and over in this one, pushing himself through to 3/4 mount. You start punching and they're given a choice of like going flat to their back and letting you pass to mount, or turning their back and ending up with giving up back control, or trying to push you back into half guard and just getting smushed again. And the great thing is that when you're poking your knee out of their half guard and starting to work towards 3/4 mount, you want to put your knee down on the floor next to their hip and push their legs over to that direction. They're going to put their hand on your knee to stop you. Then you slap on the Kimura grip, and that allows you to pass even better. If you get the Kimura off their belly and onto the ground, the hand, they're pretty much not going to be able to come up into you without you tearing their shoulder off. So you can start turning towards their legs, using your own legs to free your trapped leg, doing all sorts of clever stuff. If you watch Davi Ramos in the UFC, he did a couple of cool Kimura trap back takes from top, where you get the Kimura, you sort of jump over the opponent's head onto your own back, as in like laying on your back, and as they turn up into you, you take their back. But that was all cool, and when you got the Kimura, you also have the underhook. You can just punch the underhook through because their elbow is out. So he was using all three of those really well. The Leon Edwards takedown attempt in third was crazy, but he has done that to people. He surprised them with a takedown attempt. He did it to Kamaru and Colby. But the price of failing it was, ending up on the bottom of the sprawl, and then Brady used the threat of the guillotine to turn him over. The guillotine from Mount was really nice. I've been watching loads of Marcelo Garcia lately, and I think it's quite clear. Typically, the guillotine from Mount is not accessible if the guy is flat on his back or his head's back on the mat. It's more accessible when he starts turning onto his side to start escaping. Really liked that Brady hid his own hand behind his hip and then was sort of fighting Edwards' top hand. And Edwards, you could see that the choke was in position because Edwards was starting to panic. There just wasn't any pressure on it until he got his hands together. And that's always something to look for in when I started working on my guillotine about 4 or 5 years ago. I decided I really wanted to crack this arm-in guillotine shit. And I still can only do it off one arm. So if they put their head on my right side, I'm fucked. But one of the things that really helped me was not squeezing my arse off constantly, but just looking at how they were reacting. Because the guillotine, you want to get it in the right position. If it's not on their throat, you're probably not getting it. It's an accuracy thing more than it is a squeeze thing. But if you lock your hands and you don't know whether you've got their throat or not, you don't know if you've got the right positioning or not, you can just watch or pay attention to how they react. Because if they start moving fast, I've probably got him here. And then you just have to keep the grip without having to squeeze your ass off. You just keep it and threaten them. And then slowly start to tighten it. It's a lot easier to catch something and hold it and know that the other guy's going to tire himself out for trying to fight out of it than it is trying to grab something, squeeze your ass off, and then give up just on the cusp of them tapping because you think it's not working. So that was a really good guillotine from him. The whole performance was good from him. I was very impressed. He's been kind of hit and miss in the fights I've seen him in. I've not been super excited about him, but I did think that was really good. Co-main was Ulberg versus Jan Blachowicz, and this stank. I did a whole thing on the Boycast talking about Ulberg because he's done some interesting things. I mean, he's on a really good run on paper. He's just not caught on in the way you would expect him to. And I think it's because people do see flaws in him. I said that he's hugely... He reeks of Luke Rockhold. That very... Being tall, being able to lean back and throw the lead hook in answer to anything. If you saw in this fight, Blachowicz was walking towards him, Ulberg would inevitably throw the left hook as a counter at some point. He'd lean back, he'd turn side on, and he'd throw the left hook. And loads of times, Jan Blachowicz was able to land the right low kick as Ulberg was turning side on into like a horse stance. He commits so much to that left hook, the counter left hook, that he just completely exposes his legs to being punted. Didn't get smoked like Luke Rockhold, often did in the tail end of his career, getting hit as he leaned backwards. But, I mean, what let Jan Blachowicz down here was the same thing that normally lets Jan Blachowicz down. He's never had trouble making weight. He's always enormous in there at light heavyweight, and you go, wow. Whenever he fights someone who's come up from middleweight, you go, wow, that's a real light heavyweight. And then you realise that he's just very, very good at making weight, but he only ever has a round and a half of cardio. He's been a problem for about 10 years, and he's never really addressed it or been able to fix it. And then Kevin Holland versus Gunnar Nelson was good fun. I thought Gunnar looked better than I expected. Very sort of limited on the feet, but was doing decently with that lead hand trap, rear hand straight. He does that, goes into the clinch, grabs the double collar tie normally. Holland was grabbing the double collar tie instead. Holland likes to throw his elbow to his collar tie a lot, and I thought that was going to really get Gunnar into trouble. But there were points in this fight where Kevin Holland had the double collar tie, that's both hands holding the back of the head, and he freed his hand he freed his right hand to elbow, and Gunnar Nelson stared at him, waited for the elbow, and then he took the elbow on the head and tried to duck into the clinch immediately afterwards. And I was like, fair play, knows what's coming, just wants to get the fight to the ground at any cost. Kevin Holland's guard, everyone says, Kevin Holland just gives up when it hits the ground, but Kevin Holland's guard has always been tricky because he's so gangly and long. He was able to throw up these omoplatas constantly, just grabbing under the leg and swinging his hips around. And Gunnar Nelson, he was able to use them to pass a few times. Gunnar Nelson did some nice underpassing, which you don't see enough in MMA. I'm trying to think of who I've seen do it, like Kevin Lee. Charles Oliveira did it a few times to Tony Ferguson. But it's when you can put your opponent's feet above their head on the mat, basically. You point their arse in the air. And it can be good against very long, tall guys. Because if you saw, whenever Gunnar Nelson stood in the guard, he just looked ridiculous. It reminded me of Kid Yamamoto standing at people's guards. And he'd be like barely off the floor, or their butt would barely be off the floor. It's interesting because that reminded me a lot of Holland's fight against Reinier de Ridder last time out, where Reinier de Ridder kept standing over him. And Reinier de Ridder also got attacked a lot from the guard by Holland throwing up omoplatas and things. But that standing over him, tripoding over him seemed to work decently. Holland got the decision, probably fair because he landed like 5 times as many strikes on the feet and wasn't really in a lot of trouble on the ground. Molly McCann, they had her lined up to fight a girl who is 4 fights, 4 losses, 3 times finished in the UFC. You cannot find a worse fighter. So they really wanted to give the hometown crowd a Molly McCann win, because apparently we all still care about that. And this girl, Alexia Thanara, was a last-minute replacement. Comes out to the ring doing like a cartoon character dance. She should have had those white gloves they used to draw cartoons with in Looney Tunes / Tex Avery days. But this hilarious dance. And I tweeted, that's the most jobber entrance I've ever seen. Like, if you run to the ring in pro wrestling, everyone knows you're getting jobbed out. It was just so funny. But she took her down, got into Molly McCann's close guard, and she just can opener to her. And the can opener, yes, it's a powerful position to start using ground and pound. Yes, it can tire people out very well. But Molly McCann was throwing up bad arm bars and getting her own guard passed by her reactions to these can openers. It was crazy. You know, she's getting pushed up against the fence in her own closed guard. It's like, get up. Scoot back to the fence, you know, when she's not can opening you. Nope. Got submitted by rear naked choke. I don't think anyone really cared anymore, but she retired too, so, you know, fair play to her. She had some fun fights. You know, when her boxing was on point, she was, fun enough. She just became a bit of a meme about the same time as Paddy, and the time that she knocked 2 people out back to back with spinning elbows was crazy. Chris Duncan versus Jordan Visenik was interesting. You know, Visenik's Cage Warriors champion. You know, he went 1-on-1 with Paul Hughes, who's just fought and really impressed against Usman Magomedov. But Visenik looked lost, and Chris Duncan, who doesn't have any time in Cage Warriors, hasn't come through a regional scene and picked up a load of belts, just turned up in the UFC fairly recently. He was in Bellator briefly, but just manhandled him for the most part. Dropped him early on with a body kick to a right straight, but then later on just got on this guillotine and strangled him. 2 guillotines in one night. And then even the fight that I expected to be the lone good fight on the card, Nathaniel Wood versus Morgan Charrier, sort of underdelivered. Nathaniel Wood standing right in front of him, very twitchy fighter, stands there ready to throw a punch, slip, and throw a counter punch. He's very good at going first and third, or showing a kick, getting you to respond to it and catching you on the counter of that. Which he did very early on. He dinged Charrier a few times and dropped him. Charrier wrestled his way back on top to end the first round. And then, the whole fight was Charrier not really doing much, except throwing the odd body kick with the ball of the foot. And those look really nasty. And I did notice that Nathaniel Wood was slowing down by round 3, but he didn't do nearly enough to get a decision. And then in the last 10 seconds of round 3, he sort of runs at Nathaniel Wood flapping, but again, doesn't throw anything meaningful. His problem as a striker has always been that he's not like a single shot knockout artist. He has stopped a few guys in recent memory, but back in Cage Warriors, you know, it was like, if the fight wasn't always going his way, he probably wasn't turning it around and he wasn't going to knock someone out just out of nowhere. This fight, he just had no urgency. Would look great, though. And then the only other thing that I want to talk about on that card was Shauna Bannon, the funniest fighter I've ever seen. Irish girl, bright orange except for from her hairline up. But she comes out and she's got a really weird style. She must have done some kind of point fighting because she's doing very taekwondo-esque high chamber of the lead leg. Pick the lead leg up with the knee high, and then you can turn it over, you can stomp in as a side kick, you can bring it down as a axe kick, you can, it's just a load of poking off one leg. It's what you should have seen from Rebelles Despan, but he spent his entire life learning taekwondo and then decided it's actually kind of useless as a fighting art. Just swinging on people because you're 6'7" and a freak is actually a lot easier. But this was the funniest visual I've ever seen. Pooja Tonmar running away backwards along the fence from Shauna Bannon on one leg, going, I'm going to poke you, I'm going to poke you. And then she knocks her down with a head kick and jumps into an armbar, frees her elbow from the armbar. You know, it's like that one, who's that Israeli fighter who has a lot of suspect fights? Haim Ghazali, that's the one. He fought a dude in Bellator in a fight that you legally wouldn't call fixed, but it looked very sketchy. At least the level of the fighters was so bad that The guy tapped to a heel hook when his knee was outside of Haim Ghazali's legs. If your knee in a heel hook goes through the opponent, like, so they've got their thighs pinched around your knee. If your knee gets to the other side of their thighs, there is no heel hook there. So if you tap to it, you're either freaking out because you don't know anything about heel hooks, or you tap to it for reasons that aren't legitimately losing the fight. But here, Pooja Tomar freed her elbow. Her elbow was in the space between Shauna Bannon's arse and her body. It was free, hanging out in the breeze. And then she bent forward and put it back in. And then got armbarred. Insane. But, women's strawweight is the good women's division. So that card was trash. What was good was one championship, 172. One championship, $1 billion in debt now? No, at least 500 million at last accounting, before they moved to a country where they don't have to reveal their financials. But they're in a lot of debt, and they're never going to make it back because they never make any money on these shows. But they did put on an absolutely stacked card in Saitama Super Arena. I was watching it going, this is fantastic. Then the pay-per-view stream starts failing. It's so unreliable that they end up putting the fights on YouTube. They show the whole event on YouTube. And you're like, this is amazing. I can share this with everyone, tell them to watch it on YouTube, blah, 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 and they're going to refund all the pay-per-views. Only problem is that this is like their blockbuster card of the year, and they're now not making any money on selling it to people at home. So they have to do, basically the entire thing is, who did they sell tickets to? Now, granted, you got Takeru at the top of the card, and he's still a superstar over there, but yeah, not ideal for one championship. However, the fights, the really important one was Nabil Anand versus Superlek. Superlek was like the best striker in the world at the time that these two met. And Nabil, they'd met once, Superlek stopped him in under 2 minutes. And if you saw that on a record, you'd go, well, he'll just do that again. But it was like, Nabil Anand is a 6'4" featherweight. Superlek had to pull out every crafty thing he could to beat this like inexperienced but enormously physically advantaged guy. And then Nabil went on a 6-fight run where he just looked better and better and better. And he came out and Superlek tried to bum rush him quickly, and it became clear that that wasn't going to work. And then Nabil just picked him apart, kneed his face, high kicked him a couple of times, jabbed him from long distance. Superlek was trying the odd idea. He was holding his rear hand out a long way to check the path of the jab. He was winging in big overhands and trying to run him to the ropes again. But man, Nabil just made him look bad. And he's not, because he's Superlek. So that was crazy to watch that. I didn't even mention on the boycast that Nadaka Yoshinari, who might be the most accomplished Nakmoy, as in Muay Thai kickboxer in Japanese history. He just made Rak Erawan look like a fool. Beautiful, sweeps his leg out, and then he hit him with a left straight that the guy didn't even react to, and then he just sort of went stiff and fell. Shinya Aoki jumped to triangle on Edward Foliang again in their fourth fight, but this time he threw up an armbar. It was a really interesting one because it was just shin in front of the face. He didn't turn his hips out or anything. He just put shin in front of the face, and then he went onto his side and finished it that way. And I'm thinking that's probably a better one for most people who don't have like the hip dexterity of Mika Galvao. Main event was Rodtang versus Takeru, and it's extremely disappointing because, I mean, Takeru's chin is shot, which you could see in like his tune-up fight against Thant Zin back in September. But Rodtang hit him once in the first round, and Takeru basically went down and couldn't get out. I mean, the count was a bit fast, and he was waiting. He was looking at his corner, waiting to jump up. Like George Foreman at the Rumble in the Jungle, he's waiting to jump up at 9 because he wanted to make the most of the rest or whatever. But yeah, it was sad because Rodtang is not, I mean, he's a decent hitter. He's not a monstrous hitter. He has, almost 300 fights, and he's never stopped anyone in the first round. This was the first time. Which I always remembered saying, like pointing out to people when they were like, how's Demetrius Johnson going to survive 1-round Muay Thai with Rodtang? It's like, probably just by, staying there and not falling over. But man, Takeru is shot. Co-main event was Masaki Noiri versus Tawan Chai. Tawan Chai is their Muay Thai champion, 4-ounce Muay Thai. He's good in kickboxing too. He's at the height of his powers. And Masaki Noiri is kind of old and kind of done. I was watching this guy back in like 2009, 2010, and I was like, wow, who's this young guy? He's really good. He's my favourite striker ever, probably. So high praise from Slacky for Masaki Noiri. But he's lost a step, and he's looked bad in his last few. And he fought Sitachai in his first fight in one, who's a very good southpaw kickboxer, Muay Thai stylist. They were fighting in kickboxing with the big gloves. And Sitachai's lead leg teep, his right leg southpaw teep, Nuiri couldn't do anything about it. And he just stood at the end of it for 9 minutes. And then at the end, he was like, oh, was that the whole fight? I never got past his lead leg. And it was looking like that against Tawanchai here. But luckily, it was 5 rounds. So he had a little bit more time to get cooking. But round 3, he finally just walks close enough to Tawanchai. Tawanchai tries to throw a knee. And Nuiri claps him with a big left hook and drops him. And then once he's hurt, and he's not able to teep Nuiri off immediately, and he's not able to read, keep Nuiri at that distance, Nuiri just buzzsaws him. This guy's combination punching is some of the funnest I've ever seen. And he slimed him, and I went absolutely bonkers because he shouldn't have won this one. Anything else good on that card? Loads of stuff, actually. Hiroki Yakamoto versus John Lineker was good. John DeBella, or as I like to call him, Fighting Niles Crane versus Samay was good. Samay's 42, and he's from Thailand. He's been fighting since he was like 8. Superlek's been fighting for 100 years and he's only 29. So imagine how long Samay has been fighting at 42. And that was banger. So yeah, great weekend of cards for one. Terrible weekend of cards for the UFC. I really hope... now we're getting reports that the buy rates are massively down. It just confirms what everyone has been saying for ages. These events are shit. You've got all the best fighters in the world and you keep putting on bad cards. And sometimes you can't help it because there's just no finishes on a card full of names or whatever. But if you're just putting out apex shite week after week, and then it's not much better when you go to a stadium in the UK. You rent the O2 for a night and you're like, these people will pay for any old shit. Molly McCann, top of the bill. This card wasn't good enough for Paddy Pimblett. They're saving Paddy Pimblett for the big shows. That tells you how absolutely cooked the UFC is. So I can only hope that it gets better, or they just give all their money to one and let one do something fun. That'll do it for today. I'm your boy Jack Slack. Sign up to the Patreon. Go read that article about Nabil. It's called Nabil Anand, the Towering Nightmare, or A Towering Nightmare. And I'll catch you later in the week for the Boycast. Takeri's wardrobe is outstanding, though. Bless.